Hi, this is going to be our discussion of the amazing novel, um, life story, or at least, or is it, of Gregory David Roberts, um, who escaped prison in Australia and settled in under a false name in Mumbai in India, where he becomes involved with a whole number of networks of Western and native locals, criminals, all different types, which is really interesting to talk about and look at in detail. So we're going to do a little of that today with a discussion guide for this book. The first question right away has to be, well, do we believe Gregory David Roberts? He doesn't present this at all as, he presents it as fiction. Um, and I think it would have to be fictionalized, otherwise, it might be criminal and certainly could be very dangerous to some of the people he talks about, whose names I assume he changed. But anyway, I mean, you can Google this and find out the truth if you believe. But does it matter? Does it matter? Or in what ways does it or doesn't it matter how much of this is true about what Gregory, whose name in the book is Lynn, about what he experiences in Mumbai? This is a love story to Mumbai. There is a love story as well with a very problematic woman named Carla. He has love affairs with other people, but we'll look at that as well. So first question, what is the role of truth, veracity, verisimilitude with regards to Lynn slash Gregory's life in Mumbai as presented in this amazing novel, Shantaram? Okay, well, let's look at also his integration. He lives very much at the lowest level of Mumbai society for a time. He eats local food. He owns like two shirts in a little hovel. Yeah, so he definitely seems to have integrated on a certain level. But how well really is Lynn? From now on, I think we'll talk more about Lynn than Gregory. How well really is Lynn integrated into Mumbai society, or should we say Mumbai societies? Is there more than one Mumbai presented here, or are they all of a piece of a tapestry? Um, there are also three major interludes. There are others, but the three major interludes are a time he spends in Prebecker's village, which is his main friend, who his first guide into Mumbai society, Prebecker, who's a very funny character and very endearing. So how do these interludes operate in the overall narrative, which is really about Mumbai, but he has these moments when he's in these interludes. How do each of them impact him? Which ones are more or most formative or differently formative for him? This time in Prebecker's village, his time then living in the slums. Um, so for a time, he loses everything. So he lives very much in the slum for a while, and then at a certain point, he is arrested. So his time in the Indian prison. Um, when you do, after hopefully reflect on this first, and when you do go and research about the author, I think he has some really interesting things to say about the Indian prison interlude, especially, and lessons that he may have learned in the writing of this book, or even possibly maybe a little bit after the writing of this book. All right, so let's talk about a couple of the segments of this Mumbai society. Let's look at there are two groups that are they're not necessarily contrasted, but I find very interesting to think about in relationship to each other, which are these Westerners that hang out at this certain cafe from all different parts of the world that he becomes involved with, many of them. And then there is Kader Khan's criminal cadre. I want to use the word cadre more than network. I haven't settled on a word that I really like for that group, but I'm going to call it cadre, it's criminal cadre. So, the Westerners are debauched, right? They are very debauched, but the Kader Khan cadre are professional criminals. So it's very interesting to look at how the two groups, you know, yeah, how we even formulate this question. How do the two compare morally? It's one of the things I love about this book is that all of the characters have very loose, I'm going to say, moral codes. However, almost every character is interested in developing a moral code, and they talk about moral codes and think about moral codes. But maybe the debauched Westerners, less so actually than the criminal cadre. So I think that's really interesting to look at those two groups in relationship to each other, and they get mixed up at various points as well. Okay, so then we've got and another thing about the criminal cadre. Kader Khan's cadre operates a bit like a salon. There is an Islamic word for this group of scholars that meets itaf. I'm not remembering the word, but anyway, it operates a bit like that. They meet, they discuss philosophical questions. I mean, sure, they do business as well, but also want to talk about. I'd love to hear what you have to say about how you think that group works and how the different members of that group do or don't represent the different ethnicities and nationalities that they have. There's Pakistani, Palestinian, Iranian, Afghani members as well as Indians in this group. There's even a couple non-Muslims. So how does that salon operate? What does that strike you as? I thought that was really interesting. Part of the book. Okay, then we've got these characters that the major characters that Lynn interacts with. I mean, there's so many characters, and they're all so vivid. Kader Khan and Prebecker both sort of operate as mentors, not to say father figures in the case of Kader Khan, for Lynn. How do they influence him differently or similarly? What is the result of that influence? On balance, is it mainly positive, or there are negatives and positives? Now here I'm going to say that spoiler alert, I don't do spoiler alerts. So stop right here if you don't want to know. Hopefully I haven't said anything too revealing yet. But how does Lynn grieve their deaths differently? The two father figure character or mentor characters. The helper in the hero journey trope, right? Kader Khan and Prebecker. Then there are the betrayals, right? Lisa to a lesser extent, but mainly Carla and Kader Khan as well. And how do these two betrayals affect Lynn's character? How are they similar or different? That's another interesting question, I think. Right. So we've talked about the interludes, the role of Mumbai and the various segments of the society of Mumbai, the salon, the moral codes of the characters, and then finally we'll conclude with this. There's going to be a Apple TV, I think, is going to do a series based on this. I'm not at all surprised. One thing also that I didn't mention about this book is that there's a lot of action. It's definitely action packed. It's a certain sized book, not too big, and definitely not too long. If you loved it as much as I did, but it's a fast read. It keeps you going because it's a page turner. There's lots of action, and intrigues, right? So it is very cinematic. But one of the things that is a surprise, I don't know why I was surprised about it, but it really impressed me about the book were these reflections. Almost, not quite every chapter, but most chapters, he tries to end on a sort of poignant moment. Not philosophical reflections as much as like emotional, an emotional moment or summing up or taking stock. And I wonder which of those. There were a couple that ran a little false for me. I think he wanted to have a lot of them, so they couldn't all be winners. But most of them were quite profound and some very moving and really still thinking about. So I'm wondering which of those reflections you thought really worked or didn't work for you. And then, how if you were to interpret this visually, if you were to make a series based on this book, how would you handle the reflections, right? The action's easy, but what elements of this story do you think will suffer or be best and less well portrayed, do you think, by the series, which may well be out by the time you're watching this? So I'll be interested to see how you compare those two. All right, so those are some interesting, I hope, questions for you to think about in your reading or reflecting upon if you've already read Shantaram. So the way these are going to work is please send me your reflections. And when I've received enough reflections, a certain number of people's reflections on these questions, then I will post my reflection on these questions and probably others that'll pop up to me after the second I finish doing this. L'esprit de l'escalier, as the French say. But also maybe probably some interesting questions that you all might bring to me as well about this, what I think is an amazing book, Shantaram by Gregory David Roberts. Thank you.